Hi everyone, my name is Tony. Antibiotic used to be my best friend. I used to take them for cold, flu, and whenever I feel sick. My story started in 2012, when I had an accident and I pulled a muscle in my back. The pain was horrible. It increased in intensity and for some reason appeared to move into my stomach. I have visited the GP more than one time, but they found nothing. 2 months later, I had severe spasm in my back. I was rushed into the hospital. That was when I found that I was diagnosed with a resistant type of an MRSA infection. They have sent me to do an MRI scan, which showed that I had swelling in various vertebrae in my spine. On top of all of this, I was moved into isolation for 3 weeks, since I had a resistant type of an MRSA infection. They have used something called the Hickman line, which is basically a tube that is connected to a vein in my chest. This was done to ensure the delivery of intravenous antibiotic infusion to the site of infection as fast as possible. I was given the highest dose of antibiotics twice a day. It took me around 8 weeks to recover from the infection. However, the treatment continued for 9 weeks that I spent in the hospital. I didn't really understand that at the time, because I thought I can stop it whenever I feel better. I was barely able to walk at the beginning of my recovery, and that resulted in some muscle wasting. I was feeling extremely weak. I used to walk up and down the hospital corridor 3 to 4 times a day to build up my strength. Before I left the hospital, I was allowed out into the town one day. It felt great to be outside again, and I felt a great sense of achievement. The IV antibiotic treatment continued on my return home, with a district nurse visiting regularly to flush out the Hickman line. One of the most challenging parts of this journey was that all the burden was on my wife, in terms of hospital visits and worrying about my recovery. I was unable to drive for a while, so Sarah had to do all the driving. Even when I was able to drive again, I could only manage one way. My experience was long and difficult. Can you guess why? Yes, you guessed it right. It's antibiotic resistance.
Over time and exposure to antibiotics, it is possible for certain groups of bacteria to change in a way that antibiotics cannot kill them. Resistance to antibiotics is when certain strands of bacteria develop the ability to overcome the drugs designed to kill them. Bacteria can become resistant by learning how to prevent antibiotics from working, by driving antibiotics out of the cell, and by genetically mutating so that antibiotics cannot stop them. As a result of resistance, bacteria will continue to grow, making infections harder to treat or impossible in some cases, and is therefore one of the world's biggest threats. Infections caused by resistant bacteria will require a more powerful antibiotic or combinations, increasing the risk of side effects. Several medical procedures and advances, including joint replacements, organ transplants, and cancer therapy, depend on the ability of antibiotics to kill bacteria. Resistant bacteria can find their path through people, animals, and surfaces. A single person developing a resistant bacterium in their gut can spread it to others via direct or indirect contact. Animals receiving antibiotics will develop resistant bacteria that can spread to people who consume the animal's meat or any food crops that were fertilized with the animal's feces. This will end up affecting everyone. Anyone of any age, of any ethnicity, and in any country can develop resistance. People with a weaker immune system are at an increased risk of developing an infection, which increases their exposure to antibiotics, and are therefore at a higher risk of developing resistance. New resistance mechanisms are spreading globally, and levels of resistance are rising dangerously, threatening the ability to overcome several infections. Without further action, the world can reach a post-antibiotic era where common and minor infections can lead to death. So how can we stop this? Prevent infections in the first place. Take antibiotics only when prescribed and always take the full course. And finally, spread antibiotic resistance awareness. We can do this together. Follow us on Instagram to learn more about antibiotics, resistance mechanisms, and ways to prevent it. Take part in our weekly quizzes, keep up to date with the latest news, read about patient stories, and become an antibiotic guardian. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment down below.